They were neighbors once. Best friends as kids, sharing laughter, secrets, and little adventures. He was the boy who everyone picked on because of the color of his skin, and she was the fearless girl who stood up for him when no one else would. But then, she vanished from his life. Years later, fate brings them together again, but neither recognizes the other. What happens when childhood memories collide with adult desires? Stay till the end to witness a story of lost love, suspense, and destiny. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is a story you won't forget. Elias adjusted the strap of his worn leather bag as he stepped off the train at Harrington Station. The city sprawled before him, tall buildings reflecting the afternoon sun, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of fresh coffee from nearby cafes. It was nothing like Brookfield, his childhood home, where the streets were lined with familiar brick houses and every corner held a memory. He tried to focus on the reason he was here. The new job opportunity at the Harrington Institute had seemed like a fresh start, a chance to build something on his own. But as he walked down the bustling streets, memories of Brookfield kept slipping through the cracks of his mind, uninvited yet comforting. He remembered the narrow lane where he had spent countless hours as a child, chasing after Sanya. She had been his neighbor, just a few houses down, with a laugh that could shatter even the heaviest of silences. They had been inseparable in those days, sharing marbles, stolen mangoes, and whispered secrets behind closed doors. But there were darker memories too. Elias's skin had always set him apart, a constant reason for cruelty from other kids in the neighborhood. He remembered the sting of words thrown like stones, the isolation, the bruises that weren't always visible. And he remembered Sanya, small, fiery, fearless, standing between him and the jeering crowd of boys, her little fists clenched, her eyes blazing with a courage far beyond her years. The memory of that day was etched into him like ink on paper. The bullies had cornered him near the old oak tree at the end of the street, and he had thought, truly thought, that he would never get out. And then Sanya had appeared, somehow faster and braver than he had ever seen, her voice sharp as a whip, scattering the boys like leaves in the wind. She had grabbed his hand, pulling him to safety, and in that instant, something inside him had shifted. A feeling he didn't yet understand had taken root, a warmth, a protective, tender pull toward her. And then, just like that, she was gone. Her family had moved away days later, leaving him with a void that no other friend, no other game, no other laugh could fill. He had watched the moving truck take her away from the window of his bedroom, the little figure of Sanya waving one last time as the streets of Brookfield swallowed her up. Now, years later, here he was in Harrington, a grown man with a job, a life to build, and yet a part of him still lingered in Brookfield, still lingered in the laughter, the games, and the warmth of a girl who had once been everything to him, though he hadn't known what that meant at the time. Elias shook his head and stepped into the Institute grounds, trying to focus on the present. That's when he saw her. She was standing by the entrance, sunlight glinting off her hair, her posture confident, her eyes scanning a clipboard. And for a moment, Elias's heart stuttered. There was something familiar about the curve of her smile, the tilt of her head, the way she absent-mindedly tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But she wasn't the little girl from Brookfield. Not anymore. She had grown taller, her features sharper, her presence commanding. "Hey, you're new here, right?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was hers, Sanya, though he didn't realize it yet. "I'm Sanya. I think you're in orientation too?" Elias found himself walking down the cobblestone paths of the Harrington Institute, the autumn sunlight spilling across the lawns in golden patches. Each step echoed softly, carrying with it the hum of students passing by, the rustle of leaves, and a distant laughter that, for a fleeting moment, made him pause. He glanced around, searching for the source, not realizing it was coming from Sanya, who was a few steps ahead, her hair catching the light in a way that reminded him, faintly, of something he couldn't yet name. Their project had been assigned a week ago, and since then, Elias had discovered how easy it was to spend hours near her without feeling the weight of time. They had settled into a rhythm, coffee in the morning, library sessions in the afternoon, and casual walks across the Institute gardens as the sun dipped lower. She had a way of smiling when she was concentrating that made him feel lighter, unburdened, though he couldn't explain why. Sanya, for her part, found herself thinking about him in moments she couldn't control. She would catch herself staring during lectures, imagining scenarios where they laughed together, where he reached out for her hand during a quiet evening stroll, or where she could simply sit beside him and feel that inexplicable warmth again. It was frustrating and thrilling all at once, a magnetic pull she couldn't name, a fascination that made her chest tighten with both excitement and curiosity. Elias had begun to notice the little things, how she tucked a stray hair behind her ear, how her eyes lit up when she explained an idea, the subtle way she leaned forward when she wanted to hear something more closely. There was familiarity in her gestures, echoes of something buried deep in his memories. And he couldn't shake the feeling that he had known her once, long ago, in a different life, in a city that seemed like a dream now. During one study session in the Institute library, the quiet hum of whispered conversations and pages turning created a cocoon around them. Sanya had bent over a set of notes, her brows furrowed in concentration. Elias watched her for a moment before clearing his throat softly. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual, though his voice betrayed a hint of something deeper. "Do you want to take a break?" Sanya looked up, eyes meeting his, and smiled, a smile that sent a flicker of déjà vu through him. "Sure," she said. They walked to a nearby cafe, the crisp air carrying the scent of coffee and autumn leaves. As they sipped their drinks, Sanya found herself laughing at a small joke he made, the sound spilling freely, bubbling like it had years ago. "You know," she said thoughtfully, stirring her coffee, "there's something about you. I feel like I've known you forever." "It's strange." Elias's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to tell her, to say that she was right, that he did know her, that she had saved him once when the world had been cruel. But he didn't. The words stuck in his throat. He simply nodded, offering a smile that was half understanding, half longing. Over the next few weeks, their routine deepened. They studied together, exchanged casual texts about deadlines, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, shared pieces of their lives. Elias told her about his childhood in Brookfield in vague terms, careful not to reveal too much, but enough that a few details made Sanya pause. She found herself noticing patterns, little coincidences, like the way he described the old oak tree by his childhood home or the games he played as a kid. She brushed it off as mere chance, but the pull in her chest grew stronger each day. One evening, the Institute hosted a casual festival in the courtyard, strings of lights twinkling in the early dusk. Elias and Sanya found themselves paired for a scavenger hunt, the kind they used to organize in school. He laughed as she darted ahead, teasing him for being slow, and she teased back as he caught up, their banter filled with the ease of long, familiar friendship. Elias blinked, trying to place her face. He shook his head lightly, smiling politely. "Yeah, Elias," he said. "First day," she smiled back, and something inside him hummed, an echo of a memory he couldn't quite reach. And yet, there was an inexplicable pull, a curiosity that he couldn't name. Over the next few days, they were paired in group projects, sat near each other during lectures, and found themselves sharing coffee breaks. Elias found himself drawn to her energy, her laughter, her intelligence. There was something about her that stirred a recognition deep in his chest, though he couldn't place it. Sanya, on the other hand, found herself thinking about Elias in ways she couldn't explain. She felt drawn to him, entertained by his quiet confidence, charmed by his laughter, and caught herself daydreaming about him during her lectures. She wanted to know him, to spend time with him, to be near him. But there was a strange, magnetic tension she couldn't understand. Little did they know. Both haunted by memories they couldn't yet name. The threads of the past were weaving themselves into the present. The boy who had been bullied and the fearless girl who had once saved him were now adults, meeting again by fate, neither recognizing the other, but the bond that had formed in childhood was still there, waiting to ignite. And as Elias sat across from Sanya during a group discussion, He caught her smile, the one that felt familiar yet unfamiliar, and he felt it. That pull, that connection, something deep inside whispered, "I've known you before." But for now, it was just a whisper, a flicker, a shadow of something bigger, something inevitable. And neither of them knew that the story of their childhood, the games, the laughter, the protection, the first stirrings of love, was about to collide with the reality of who they had become. During one challenge, Sanya tripped near the edge of a fountain, her balance faltering. Before she could even catch herself, Elias was there, his hands steadying her. "Got you," he said softly. The words were simple, but the memory of being held, being protected, surged through her unexpectedly. Her heartbeat quickened, a warm, inexplicable recognition she couldn't place. They continued the festival, laughter spilling from them as they moved through the challenges. But both found themselves lost in thought more often than participating. Elias remembered a similar day in Brookfield, the sunlight slanting through the trees as he ran beside a little girl who had once saved him, and he realized that something in him had always longed for her presence, even if he hadn't known her name. Sanya felt it too, a flicker of familiarity, a pull she couldn't explain, as though destiny had threaded them together across years and miles. Back at the Institute library later that week, Elias stumbled upon an old book she had left on the table, a sketch tucked inside the pages, a little drawing of a girl and boy playing under a tree. A childlike rendering that made his chest tighten. The style was unmistakably childish, yet there was something hauntingly familiar in the way the figures leaned into each other. Elias's mind raced. Could this be? Sanya, meanwhile, had begun keeping notes in her journal, sketches of a boy she couldn't get out of her head. Daydreams where he held her hand, laughed with her, and looked at her in a way that felt like home. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story, only that he had captured something in her heart that she couldn't shake. Days turned into weeks. Group projects, coffee breaks, study sessions, and casual conversations became the rhythm of their lives. The Institute seemed to conspire to keep them together, weaving moments that were at once ordinary and extraordinary. They exchanged personal stories, laughed over memories, debated ideas, and grew increasingly attuned to each other's moods. Then came the moment that nearly broke them both, the anniversary of the day Sanya had saved him. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Elias felt it in a flash of memory as they walked through the campus garden. The way she moved, the tilt of her head, the confident stride, it was her. A child's memory buried deep inside him clawed its way back, desperate to surface. Sanya, sensing a strange intensity in Elias's gaze, felt her heart flutter. There was something she knew but couldn't name, a pull she didn't understand. She had imagined this before, moments where the boy from her fantasies seemed real, tangible. But now he was, and yet not. She wanted to ask, to confront the feeling, but fear held her back. What if it was just coincidence? What if she imagined the connection? One rainy afternoon, they found themselves sharing a bench under the shelter of a large oak tree on campus. Rain streaked down the glass panels around them, creating a rhythm that matched the pounding in their chests. They sat in silence, watching the world blur around them. "I feel like I've met you before," Elias finally admitted, his voice low, almost a whisper. His eyes searched hers, trying to anchor the elusive feeling. Sanya's breath hitched. She looked down, fiddling with the hem of her sleeve. I don't know. I feel the same way. It's like something familiar. Something important." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence heavy with unspoken emotions and the weight of memories neither fully remembered. And then, as if drawn by invisible threads, a shared memory surfaced. An echo of laughter, a protective hand, a little girl standing between him and the world. Elias's eyes widened, and Sanya's fingers trembled as recognition began to dawn. The Institute faded around them. All that existed was the pull of years, the warmth of a childhood bond resurfacing, and the realization that the person they had been searching for, unknowingly, had been standing right in front of them all along. The evening sun painted the Harrington Institute campus in shades of gold and crimson, casting long shadows across the gardens. Elias walked slowly, notebook in hand, but his mind wasn't on the work ahead. Every step carried him closer to a truth he hadn't dared confront until now. Something about Sanya, the way she laughed, the way she gestured when she spoke. Everything felt like fragments of a memory buried deep inside him, a puzzle he couldn't yet piece together. Sanya was waiting by the fountain, tossing small pebbles into the water with a faint smile. The wind tousled her hair, and her laughter reached him before he even entered the courtyard. That laugh. It was the same laugh that had once echoed down the streets of Brookfield years ago. Something inside Elias tightened, a mixture of anticipation, fear, and a longing he could no longer deny. "Hey," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Sanya looked up, her smile widening. "Hey, you're late," she teased, but there was an unusual softness in her tone, a vulnerability she usually kept hidden. They walked together in silence for a few moments, the golden light reflecting off the water and surrounding them in an almost magical glow. Finally, Elias stopped and looked directly at her, his heart hammering in his chest. "Sanya, can I ask you something?" His voice was low, cautious. "Anything," she replied, her gaze curious and open. Elias took a deep breath. "Do you ever feel like you've met someone before? Like you've known them your whole life, even if you just met?" Sanya's breath caught. She glanced down at her hands, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. "Yes," she whispered. "I feel that all the time, especially with you." Elias's chest tightened. He reached out slowly, taking her hand in his. "There's a reason," he said, his voice trembling. I think I've known you a long time, longer than we realize." Sanya's eyes widened, her heart racing. The pieces of the past, the games, the laughter, the fights, the protection, flooded her mind all at once. She remembered the little boy with dark skin, the neighbor who had once been everything she cared about, the one she had saved from the bullies. And suddenly everything clicked. "Elias," she breathed, disbelief and joy mixing in her voice. It's you, you're him, the boy from Brookfield." Elias's eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "Sanya, I can't believe it. I've remembered every moment. That day when you saved me, I've never forgotten." "Not once," she laughed softly, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I remember you too. I remember everything. I didn't realize it was you until now." The courtyard seemed to hold its breath as they stood there, hands intertwined, the golden light of the setting sun bathing them in warmth. Years of longing, separation, and unspoken feelings collapsed into a single, overwhelming moment of recognition. "I never stopped thinking about you," Elias whispered, voice raw with emotion. "Even when you left, even when I thought I'd lost you forever." Sanya leaned closer, her forehead resting against his. "Neither did I," she admitted. "I've dreamed about you, imagined what it would be like if we met again. I wanted to know you, even when I didn't know it was you." They laughed softly, a mixture of relief and disbelief. And then Elias kissed her forehead, a tender, protective gesture that carried all the love, fear, and hope he had kept hidden for years. "I guess we were always meant to find each other," he murmured. Sanya smiled against his chest, tears streaming freely. "Always," she whispered. The fountain bubbled softly behind them, the autumn leaves swirling in the wind, and for the first time in years, the world felt complete. The little boy who had been bullied and the fearless girl who had once saved him were finally together again. Their childhood bond transformed into a love that had waited patiently across time and distance. Hand in hand, they walked across the courtyard, past the familiar paths of Harrington Institute, and into a future neither had dared to imagine but both had always dreamed of. The past and present collided beautifully, and for Elias and Sanya, there was only the certainty of each other, a love rooted in memories, courage, and destiny. The days after their revelation were filled with a quiet magic. Harrington Institute became more than a place of study. It became the backdrop of a love story that had waited years to be written. Elias and Sanya walked together through the campus gardens, sharing stories of childhood memories they had never fully revealed, laughing over the games they used to play, and marveling at the strange twists of fate that had brought them back together. Elias would sometimes pause, looking at her as if memorizing every detail, the curve of her smile, the light in her eyes, the way her hand fit perfectly in his. "I can't believe we were so close all those years ago," he said one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Sanya leaned against him, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. "I know," she whispered. "And yet, it feels like no time has passed at all." They often spoke of Brookfield, of the small lane where they had first met, of the little moments that had shaped their childhood. Elias told her about the nights he had thought of her, wishing she hadn't gone away, and Sanya shared her own recollections, how she had carried him in her heart without fully understanding why. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves sitting under the same oak tree in the Institute courtyard, watching the raindrops splatter against the ground. Elias took her hand in his and said softly, "I've loved you in ways I didn't even know as a kid. I just knew you were special. That day you saved me. I didn't understand it then, but I think that's when a part of my heart was yours forever." Sanya smiled, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "And I've always carried you too," she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "Even when I didn't know it was you, I dreamed about moments like this, imagined holding your hand, imagining our lives together. And now, it's real." Elias brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "I promise," he said, "no more distance. No more years lost. We'll make every moment count, Sanya. We'll build our memories from now, and I'll never let you go." Sanya's heart swelled. She laughed softly, a sound mingling with the rhythm of the rain, and pressed her lips to his in a tender, lingering kiss, a seal of everything they had been waiting for, the culmination of childhood dreams and adult longing. They spent the evening wandering through the city, hand in hand, letting the world fade around them. Brookfield and Harrington, past and present, childhood and adulthood, all seemed to merge into a perfect moment of love. They didn't need words. The quiet understanding between them said everything. Years later, they would often sit together, reminiscing about how it all began. The games, the laughter, the small hands held across the fence, and the courage that had defined them both. They would tell each other stories of that little black-skinned boy and the fearless Indian girl who had changed each other's lives forever. And in those moments, Elias would always whisper, to the girl next door, "I never stopped thinking of you." Sanya would smile, resting her head on his shoulder, and reply softly, "And I never stopped thinking of you either." Under the golden light of the setting sun, with hands intertwined and hearts finally whole, they knew one thing for certain: some loves are meant to wait, to grow quietly and to bloom at the exact right moment. And theirs, timeless, tender, and fiercely enduring, had finally found its forever.